So I suppose today is for parents, for teachers, for anybody really with a bit of an interest in understanding a bit more about dyslexia and other learning difficulties. So I specialise in the dyslexia space. We do look at neurodiversity as a whole, so autism, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. We'll briefly touch on those as there often is an overlap. Students can obviously have a difficulty in one area and in another area, but generally speaking, we'll be mainly focusing on the dyslexia piece for today's session. As mentioned, we'll leave a small bit of time for question and answers, so feel free to put some of them in the chat or come off mute towards the end of the session. If you can hold your questions until then, that would be great. And again, as mentioned, if there's anything confidential or anybody have any specific concerns or questions, please feel free to email those to me. I'd just ask if everybody could maybe go on mute just for this session, just so that there's no background interference or noise or kids running around, just so that everybody can maintain their concentration and focus. Perfect. I think somebody's getting ready for Halloween there, I think, in the background. Great, perfect. So hopefully you can all go on mute and that'd be great. So today's session, as mentioned, so I'm Una Buckley. I'm a dyslexic specialist, consultant and coach. So just a bit of an outline as to our background, I suppose, and what we do and where I've kind of come from today. So I'm highly dyslexic. I also have dysgraphia. Sometimes I forget which ones I have because I can't spell them. Borderline dyscalculia, so a link in with maths, but nothing majorly severe. I've had my own challenges in school, primary, secondary, third level, so I can very much empathise with yourselves and with students as to where they're coming from and understanding a bit more as to, you know, the struggles and the day-to-day challenges. So homework, studying, even back as spelling, phonics, handwriting, maths, tables, learning the clock, and then everything in between: coordination, reflexes, tying shoelaces, riding bikes, swimming, everything and anything. So each student is so individualistic, and it's really important to note that, you know, what your child or maybe a student in your classroom might experience may not be at all the experience for another child or another student. So often we get kids that will say to us, oh, we're not really sure like why they're in the class with me or going to extra resource, you know, I don't really understand. They seem to do all really well in certain areas. So it's very important to highlight that there's just differences. Okay, some will have it more heightened, some will have it more borderline, some will be very close to, you know, they might not even have gotten a diagnosis, they just got slightly tipped in a percentile. So it's really important to know that, you know, there is a move away from, let's say, mild, moderate, severe, but that is very much still evident in terms of, you know, scale and how students fit into bits of that category. All okay so far? Anybody have any questions? No, we're good. You can all see my screen. That's the most important thing. Okay, so just a bit of a background. So I've carried out a huge amount of work with many organisations and been very fortunate to do so. We do ongoing work with aspects of the HSE and TUSLA. We've a scaled out actually training programme for lecturers and for teachers across the ETB and across universities here in Munster. I'm based in Cork. Apologies. I am from Dublin though, so I know most of you are up in Dublin. So I'm more down the south region of the country. And just look, a whistle stop tour, we've been doing a segment nationwide, and I'm a regular speaker on some of the RTE and national radios, providing just tips and suggestions for parents and for teachers. I won't go through all of this because it's a little bit boring. Just giving you a background, I suppose, an outline of what we do. So we work specifically with students with various ranges of learning difficulties. We do small kids all the way up then to older adults. So our oldest has actually been retired about a year or two, so he's actually in the 70s now at the moment. So it's the whole way through, and I suppose that's where we got our name from initially, is that you're blossoming hopefully throughout your whole life. So it's not just specifically focused on kids in school, because after school, what do they do then? You know, do they go into the workforce? They still will have their learning difference, are there different way and different abilities. So it's very important to emphasize that that journey doesn't stop once you finish education. And unfortunately, it is often portrayed that way, that, you know, when you finish secondary school and you finish university, that's it, kind of figure it out for yourself. So I very much as an adult, obviously with learning challenges, very much wanted to help fellow adults also in that area. And being seen, heard, listened to, understood is vital to what we do. So we look at that going forward. A bit about our interactions. So we obviously carry out assessments, we do workshops and all of that type of thing as well. As mentioned, if anybody wants to get in touch or any questions, here's some of our information. Hopefully you already have some of it anyway. Most do receive your emails from me. But if there's any concerns from that side, please let me know. Just to share, and we'll do a little bit of this throughout the session, of some of our students and some of our parent testimonials. We often get blown away really by some of the lovely things that people share with us, or the different insights that they've gathered and different insights that they've gained. The main focus and area is really around trying to help with day-to-day activities. So for Monica and both of her sons, actually, with helping with the overall homework and the overall organisation was very, very useful, which we'll touch on here now as we move forward. So giving you a little bit of background first so that we're all on the same page. I know lots of people are coming from different aspects and different strands, so we'll work at kind of the basic level first and we'll move up. Some will be coming at this from maybe a limited understanding and some may be coming at this from an advanced understanding. So just to make sure that everybody is clear, I'll kind of go with the basics and we'll move forward. So dyslexia, if we go in the top, right hand, left, right hand first before I get my lefts and rights mixed up. Dyslexia is very much a very broad scope now. Obviously, Dyslexia Awareness Month, and there's lots of different, let's say, poster occasions around dyslexia, but the definition of that is highly evolving and highly changing. It can affect executive functioning, processing, word memory, auditory, phonological awareness, or it can affect so many different strands. It can affect more of their maths than their spelling. It can affect more of their coordination than of their reading or their maths. So it very much varies, as I mentioned, from student to student. Common things to look out for and things that maybe have a red flag, so sequences, and we'll still get the comment myself, you know, as B's and D's. I get a lot of kids now actually with P's and Q's, and there could be total random letters as well. They can mix up their C with their H. You know, it doesn't have to be letters that look alike or that, you know, sound similar or anything from that side. Phone numbers, vital, days, months, and we've seasons, weeks, everything and anything really in terms of chronological orders can be very, very difficult to understand. So the main useful method, and we'll look at this throughout the session, and some of the tips that can integrate at home and in a school and a classroom setting, is the multisensory approach. So seeing it, saying it, hearing it, writing it, using as much sensory aspects as possible. Now that again is very individual, so it's very much kind of linking in with the student depending upon what age they are to kind of tease out how much sensory is enough and without it being sensory overload, but we'll cover that. I don't do a lot on the poster dyslexic people. I know Richard Branson and everybody knows kind of the 4 or 5 top people in the world. They're dyslexic and this person and Albert Einstein. And it's great to know those, but it's very important for kids and really all age groups to have somebody that's relatable. So it's really important to know that this particular person, they got through bits of education, they're still alive, they're still doing okay. They don't have to be a billionaire or running massive organizations. It's very important to have relatable people in society that they can say and look up to as some element of a role model. From the dyscalculia side, hopefully some of you are aware of dyscalculia, or that may be a presenting symptom also. So dyscalculia is a main overlap from the maths aspect. So I'm on the board with the British Dyslexia Association, and they have a dyscalculia strand that we're setting up at the moment. And it's very much to emphasize that students with dyslexia may also have dyscalculia. Often students may be misdiagnosed as dyslexia when they have dyscalculia, and vice versa. So dyscalculia is very much kind of coming up in the runnings an awful lot more. It's not as, you know, kind of shouted about over here yet in Ireland, but something very important to watch out for because it can be often fall into the dyslexia bracket when it could be dyscalculia. The general kind of things to look out for would be maths abilities and retention from that side. There is overlap though with words. So that's a really important thing to resonate and understand. There is an overlap with spelling, times, directions, coordination, memorizing, signs, symbols, fractions. Look, all of those there on the slide. I won't go through all of them, but it is just important that some of those symptoms will also be with dyslexia, and then there may be an overlap. Going on to a little bit from the dysgraphia side. So dysgraphia, I myself have dysgraphia. So this is more of an issue with computing information from your brain to your hand. So it presents itself generally through the form of the first 2 lines or the first 2 paragraphs might be okay. And then as you move through, the content may be totally illegible. This often doesn't get presented until later, maybe in the school year, depending upon how severe this may be. Students at a very young age of primary school know that they can mask things very, very easily. So we look at that moving forward and how we can help in that space. But that masking element can be illustrated in a school context because there's very limited writing. So often they may have dysgraphia, but it may not be presented quite young because there isn't essays and Shakespeare's to write about. But that can be obviously outlined or detected at a secondary school level quite early on once the large body of work is asked to be produced in a time limit. So it's the words per minute, it's the accuracy, it's the eligibility, it's everything in between. So the main avenue for that then obviously is a further assessment, but speech to text, typing, any additional piece of software will never be able to write as fast as a person is ever able to type. So typing is definitely a skill that all generations now need to have with modern day and technology, but our hands would physically never be able to write to the level of accuracy and the level of eligibility that we'll ever be able to press buttons. So it's really important, regardless of whether a student has dysgraphia or not, to be working on these aspects and motor skills in terms of typing.
Sorry, okay. Una, would dysgraphia as well have what's the word, like his muscles would get sore? So after writing, do you know the way your hands would get tired after writing? His hands seems to get tired very, very fast. I'd be like, oh, you haven't even wrote.
Exactly. Yeah. So as you mentioned there, definitely from the motor side can be a huge one. So the dysgraphia is usually detected to OT's assessments, so to occupational therapy assessments. They're no longer actually majorly carried out through education psychologists, time, logistics, so many reasons. So it usually falls into an OT category that they will suggest then, finding gross motor aspects and, skills to help with the hand movement. But yes, it's because the signal moves so quick from your head to your hand, you can't actually write that fast. And then the strain is held. So the strain can be held in your hand muscles. And then the unfortunate thing is if it's not caught or catched at an early stage, then it can move up. So you develop more, let's say, posture issues, or slouching over, they're like leaning over a table then inaccurately because of the muscle, strain and the muscle interference.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Perfect. So just some of the quotes, again, I can try and link in with some of these, and we do a lot of studies and research with various institutes and with people and parents and everything else. But I find some of these kind of interesting, and I'm sure maybe some of you do too, considering you're on this lovely talk this evening. Hopefully you're interested in some other elements of research. But teachers educated about dyslexia can be the one person that saves a child or from his and her family through years of frustration and anxiety. Okay, the teachers play a pivotal role in the whole education of a student. And I know we've a bit of a maybe 50-50 split between parents and teachers on this evening, but I suppose it's just so important to emphasize that they're at school for so much of the day that a student's level or a teacher's level of understanding of how to help a student is so vital, and so vital to how they progress and how they see themselves, how their mental well-being is affected, their confidence, their abilities, and how they then retain and learn pieces of information. So I just think as much of a link as a positive link, let's say, that we can create with schools and with teachers, and as much information that you can help them with and can give them about your child or about a student in the classroom, the more we can all benefit. Because as we know, kind of teachers are still caught for time. They don't have huge amount of hours in the day to be, dealing with every student and every different query and question. So it's very important, as much information that you can give them as a parent to help them, illustrate it. Oh, can you write the homework in this way? Can this be done in this way? As much of that can be liaised upon and then come up with a suitable plan for everybody, the better it can then be, moving forward as a whole for everybody involved. So some rough outlines on strategies for writing. So we'll do kind of a a bit of a whistle stop tour. So this is going to be, you know, a fast enough session today. Obviously, you know, we're just looking at kind of basics as to how much detail we can get into. I'll later be telling you about, we're running an online course at the moment that will have all of these in further level of detail. So it's accessible on our website. But, you know, if you don't get enough in today's session, there's all of the follow-on information for after this. So planning obviously is vital. So we look again in the course about how to do bits of an introduction, conclude, a middle and an end, even for primary school level, and then also for secondary school and for further education level. So that planning and structure element before you even get onto a piece of paper, that can be oral planning as well. So if a student finds it really difficult to map out their answer or finds it difficult to illustrate it down onto a page, how can they say it in an alternative fashion or alternative form? Mind maps. So through my own level of research and through other work that we've done at universities, we've developed a set way actually of doing mind maps. So general kind of, you know, throw everything in a circle and put lines out from it isn't really a mind map for students with dyslexia or different ways of learning. There's a set actual approach to doing a mind map. And usually, just to give you an outline, again, we look at this in the course, but it's done in a chronological fashion. So let's say up the top hand right corner is how you start your answer, and then you move the whole way through like a clock. So you go the whole way around. So what goes up at the top, what goes in the middle, and then what goes at the end. And then what happens with that is that students can remember that in a way easier fashion than, let's say, writing it in bullet points or writing it in a scattered mind map. So the scattered mind maps of putting, oh, learn this off or learn bits of this off, or there's facts everywhere and anywhere. There's no sequence, there's no chronological aspect to it. And then they don't know how to illustrate what they've learned from that mind map into, let's say, an exam setting or into, let's say, a test at the end of the week. So even if the spelling test in a chronological fashion will help an awful lot more. Grips. So I'm sure some of you use grips or fidgets or anything from that side within reason. I don't majorly suggest most of those, but once they're in a controlled setting and used for a set period of time, they can be very advantageous. And this particular range that I can never pronounce, so I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, is very, very useful. And we use this for most of our students. There's a pen and a pencil range. And what they do is they help, particularly for students actually that have handwriting issues, even if they haven't been assessed for dysgraphia. If there's some motor, you know, delay from that side, these can really help with formatting and holding a pen and a pencil, particularly for young kids as well, if they're even starting off in school or they're just getting into things, junior, senior infants, even for a second class, no matter what age they're, you know, we're 40s and 50s, and this will retrain a grip as well. So if a student finds it really difficult and they've been writing for a particular way for so many years and they're finding it really challenging and, you know, with no level of improvement, this actually over time can help you retrain how you hold something. Colored lines, color pages and lined pages, or a combination of both ideally. The lined pages though is vital. So often we've worked with schools and particularly primary schools, and they'll give out loads of blank pages at times to kids, which is great for creativity. But if they're writing pieces, this can be very difficult because, you know, there's no concept of how straight the line is, where does the ruler go, and if they get to draw out lines, which is a total nightmare. If you give a child a ruler, you know, it's not leveled. So the ruler can start up here and then it can go all the way even down the page at times. So it's very important to have lined pages, ideally colored for pieces of work. So if it's homework, if it's studying, if it's learning things off, very much easier to read, understand, remember. There's so much in that is majorly useful. Colored pens and markers, similar overlap, ideally not the same color as well, obviously, of the page, because it's difficult then to see, but definitely colors as much as possible within reason, right? So it doesn't want to be turning everything into a rainbow. It's a bit of a balancing act, and but very important to have elements of color because there's so much white, right? There's so much white, black, red, blue. So things are corrected. Things are written. Does somebody have a question? No? Okay. There's so much colors, there's so much lack of color in a school setting, generally speaking, that it's very important to introduce that element of color to help them retain it more. Visual storyboards. So we do visual storyboards with our primary school kids, and then also with some of our leaving cert and our college students when they're mapping out stuff. So visual storyboards is usually outlining in a visual format, drawing out how the start will look, how the middle will look, how the end will look. This is great for, fiction or any bits of personal essays, anything even small, if you're getting them used to writing, let's say, short passages, or, how even their day went. At the end of the day, draw out for me, how did the start, how did the middle, how did the end go? There's a huge creativity, obviously, element to this, even with practicing drawing. Even if they're not interested in drawing, that's okay too. But it's about representing their ideas on a page in a different format than what they're ingrained and told to. So usually it's write out everything and illustrate everything through words and through spellings. So having a story format, which is in picture form, is way more useful, obviously, and way more engaging. The general layout, as we already mentioned, so we won't come back to that, and draft attempts as much as possible. So for very young kids, we would do a process of they'll do either a little bit of their homework or they're answering a question. We'll see what we need to edit it, and then we'll do it again, depending on timelines and depending upon what needs to cover and depending upon the urgency of it. Obviously, then for secondary school, as things move forward, for teachers' perspective and from a pupil's perspective, very important then to be doing out drafts and redrafts, okay? Because no answer is ever perfect within reason. We don't want it to ever be fully perfect, but it's about illustrating to the student as how much they have done already, but then how much more of their potential they can achieve. So by redoing something and then being right, okay, these are the things that we changed. Do these make a little bit more sense now? And creating that element of communication and dialogue is vital. And then, as you said, typing. If all else fails with writing, obviously within reason for an assessment, typing is definitely a useful approach. So spelling, again, we're kind of moving through this now at 100 miles an hour. So I appreciate maybe some of this is new. So feel free if people have any questions. But spelling, we use a combination of spelling strategies, I suppose, and approaches, both for younger kids, for older kids, even for anybody really trying to relearn spellings or retain spellings.
Color.
Everybody okay? Okay, perfect. People are gone back and mute. That's okay. Okay, so the first method is the bubble approach. Okay, so we would use this not for majorly long words. So generally kind of 4 to 6, give or take, letters in a word. Okay, and this is literally getting the student to write out the words in, let's say, a fancy or a bubble way, because it takes them longer to do that generally, and then we can retain it differently. The next one is the alternating of the colors. So often what we would use this for, if there's a particular word or there's particular letters that they're finding really difficult to retain or to write out, or they're, let's say, consistently spelling one word wrong and they're leaving out the E, or they're leaving out an A in the middle of the sentence, we would do that then in a different color. Okay, so then that is visually represented in a different way. The rainbow, I don't use the rainbow as much anymore. I would for older students. The rainbow for small kids can obviously be very time consuming because they take longer to change over, obviously, to every different letter, and they can often get a little bit distracted. So for very young students, I would only use at most kind of 3 colors per every word, within reason, generally, ideally 2. For older students and teenagers, they're fine with the rainbow approach. They quite like it, but it kind of depends as well on how fast a speed we want to move through. The stair method can be very, very useful, and is probably one of the most effective ways of retaining and understanding spelling and illustrating it into memory, but also then reproducing it. Obviously, as we move down, each letter is added on. It also can be done on the way up. So if you start at the bottom and move all the way up, there's an alternative approach as well to that. Writing with the wrong hand, there's been a huge amount of research into the retention both between left and right brain and the overlap between that. We won't get into lots of the, let's say, anatomy makeup today, but writing with the wrong hand has a different brain frequency than writing with your normal hand. We have lots of students that obviously are ambidextrous, loads can briefly write the dominant hand, let's say, and then they might be able to slightly write with their other ones. But ideally, practicing the writing with the alternative hand just illustrates the brain, stores the information in the brain a little bit differently than what it would do. Alphabetical order. So if there's a sequence of spellings to be learned off, alphabetical order definitely is a very good approach. Rhyming. So any forms of rhyme, rhythm, songs, anything that can be integrated that way. And then dictionary work. And we don't do a lot with traditional dictionary work. As you can imagine, dictionaries can be very frustrating for people that find it difficult to spell the word. Generally now through online methods, or, you know, if anybody has any of the reader pens, there's a dictionary in those too. So alternative ways of finding, investigating, using dictionary stuff without it actually being the traditional dictionary book format. Okay, so some of our, I suppose, whistle-stop tour of approaches. So learning, so continuing to learn as much about dyslexia, either for yourself, for a parent, for a teacher, as much as you can communicate and illustrate to anybody else as well involved with your child or with the student. It's really, really important because there's so much evolving research and there's so much ever changing in this space. There's different things been coming out. There's different overlaps with eyesight. There's different overlaps with everything. And then obviously, let's not talk about the thousands of apps and assistive technology that's vastly coming out, you know, on a regular basis. So being as much up to date as possible can really help keep you informed. It can really help, you know, then when you're communicating with others. And educating others about dyslexia, this is really vital, obviously, especially with Dyslexia Awareness Month. But there is an awful lot of misinformation, and there is still people and parents that will come on and does that mean my child will never be able to read, or will they never be able to spell? And you know, it's just because there is lack of information still. You know, there are people that, you know, obviously haven't been affected by any of these areas, and then the information is lacking because they don't need to look into it a bit more because it's not prevalent in their life. They have so many other million things going on. And that's okay too, but as much information that you can pass on to somebody else would be great. So what I'd say throughout this session, if there's 2 or 3 things, or even just one thing that you can share with somebody else, a neighbor, cousin, a sibling, a partner, even your child yourself, or even the, you know, in a classroom setting, can you share with all the kids? If there's one key takeaway that you could communicate from today's session with everybody else, that's helping pass on bits of knowledge, and you'd be surprised, thankfully, where that goes. And the best way is to learn and retain information. Now, the unfortunate thing with this is also still so individualistic, which is why it's very, very challenging for parents and for teachers. And we'll get all the questions of, I tried to show them this way at home during homework and it just isn't working. You know, so we do an article on learning strategies and different learning strategies on our website. And if people want to look at that to learn a little bit more about best ways for learning, there's 7 different types of learning approaches, and often students with dyslexia or learning difficulties may fall into 2 or 3 of those categories. So it's very important to do as much information and as much gathering around developing learning approaches, because everything else generally isn't as effective then. So your attention, your memory isn't as effective if the student isn't being taught in the correct way that will help them. So trying to devise that strategy is very useful. We'll do that, no problem, or else you can do further research and, you know, seek out alternative methods to try and get help with that area. Calm and purposeful environment is very, very vital, as I'm sure most of you are aware, since post-COVID. You know, a purposeful environment, creating a space that works for the student and ideally for yourself, is very, very important to how we understand how our productivity levels are, how our retention is, and then how we memorize and understand the information. If there's clutter, if there's loads of books, if there is an uncomfortable environment, that generally affects how long they can retain and understand the information for. We generally have a bit of a, you know, thing that we illustrate with parents, particularly when they come on and start working with us first, is ideally some element of the house or some element of the space that they're living to be somewhat separate for schoolwork. So if that's a corner of a room, if that can be sectioned off, if there's some place separate that has a desk, a suitable enough chair so that they're not hunched over, they're not leaning back, ideally without crossing their legs. So that kind of ergonomics aspect is very important with height of the table versus height of the chair. And then setting it up, is it lit properly? Is it heated? Without being overly heated though, because then they'll fall asleep. Those basics are really, really important, because then the student comes in from school, or they'll come in from college, or wherever they're coming in from, they know that they have a set dedicated space. That's the space that I do my work, and that element then creates the focus and concentration ideally when they sit down and get into that environment. And then routines. So routines, structure, planning, organization, routines are just essential. So we do an awful lot on when a student comes to work with us first, off to what's their daily and weekly routine for all age groups, and how do they slot in their homework? Is it before activities? Is it after activities? Is it in the car? How is this integrated? And then how has that affected their tests? How does that affect how they memorize stuff? And how does that affect their progression? So as much routine and structure that can be created and communicated. So when we have young kids, 5 and 6, often they don't understand, what's going to be happening maybe some days of the week, or, they may be left out of the loop of some elements of communication. So as much of a integrated approach that can be created as much as possible really helps them then develop their own level of understanding and their own then gaps where they can, go off and do their own thing, but then they need to come back obviously for homework and for focused work. Resilience piece is very, very important, and it's hugely overlapped obviously with different ways of learning, because most of you are aware, I'm sure, coming in every day from a school setting, broken down literally, can be very, very difficult. So that confidence building back up, the abilities to cope with the school day, with things thrown at them, with different changes, different things that fluctuate, is really, really important. So growth mindset, celebrating achievements is really important. These don't have to be massive things. They don't need like a trip to Hawaii or anything like that. These can just be small things as to how can they be celebrated and recognized in a, let's say, a short-term setting. So it doesn't have to be, like these massive milestones or anything from that side. It's just short-term things as to, they did something great in school, or they helped somebody out, or they did well in a particular type of exam or in a particular test. How can that then be rewarded in an appropriate and a suitable fashion? I suppose what happens is that often students, when they're really small, and they're working away and maybe haven't gotten an assessment and maybe haven't figured things out from that side as to where their challenges are, they then get worn down, right? Like all of us, we just get worn down over time in a school setting, and by the time they get to kind of the teenage years, it can be, at a detrimental level, really, from that side, from a confidence and from a well-being approach. So it's important enough really to catch this as early as possible, as it is to figure out spellings, or as it is to figure out the alphabet, because they're all intertwined. So a child with low confidence or low self-esteem or low self-belief in themselves affects what they produce and affects how they perceive themselves and affects then how they get on in a school setting. Some of the rest, and we won't go through all of them, obviously compliments, social media, don't get through that. I won't get through that today. That causes, some element of uproar at times. But yourself, any of these things that can have a positive or that can have a negative effect, then will affect how they perceive things and perceive situations. Generally speaking, I suppose, once kind of that's much damage, not to be melodramatic about it, but once these things are kind of instilled in school day after day and week after week, they take a long time to move through, and they take a long time for students then to recover from. So that's why it's really vital from a home strategy, and from loads of our parents obviously listening, as to what can be done vitally at home to help compensate, or if you feel like the school, often aren't as helpful as you would like them to be, or there's difficulties there, what can you do at home and taking more of a stand at home? So homework, as we mentioned, desk links them with posture, noise levels, is really, really difficult. So we limit background noise, and don't recommend having music playing while doing any form of homework. We can have a beat without lyrics. So it's really important that there's no lyrics, because that affects then what they retain. So if they're learning off a spelling or learning off a sentence and they're listening to a song, the chances are it'll be 50% of the spelling and 50% of the song, because the auditory processing can be difficult. Routine, tidy laying out of books, and limiting distractions. Using a timer we're finding really useful actually at the moment for younger kids. So obviously there's a long school day, even actually for teenagers, there's a longer as much school day, and then they come home and they're like, oh God, we have so much homework to do, how are we even going to get through this? So it's very important for young kids to kind of set a realistic and estimated timeline with liaising with the teacher, right? How much time roughly should we be spending on this homework this evening or during the school week? Should it be 20 minutes? Should it be 30 minutes? We would suggest really no more than 30 minutes per any given evening. That's the max for any school, primary school level. If there's more than that, there's definitely something that isn't working from your side and from the teacher's side and from the student side, and it's just not advantageous for anybody. So it's something that we need to figure out as to how best to limit that time. But if there's, let's say, 3 subjects, so if there's a little bit of spellings, if there's a little bit of tables, and if there's a little bit of reading or English, right, we're setting a timer for 5 minutes. We're seeing how long we can get through the task in that amount of time. It's an appropriate estimation of time. If it goes over that, we have to see then if it's consistently going over that, how are we getting under this 5-minute time allotted? What do we need to do differently? So that helps with obviously their understanding and concept of time, moving towards stuff, but also then a bit of a motivating factor. You know, if they understand, right, I'm getting it done in this amount of time, that's not the end of the world. Whereas we often ask kids, you know, that are 5 and 6, how long does it take you to do your homework? Oh, years, you know, because their grasp of time is totally inaccurate. So it's very important for them at as young age as possible to understand a little bit more of understanding how to manage time and get through their homework. Setting a cutoff time, as we were saying, and if it's going over, and planning. Organization, this is more kind of, you know, general as you move a little bit older, particularly for our secondary school students. Filing, organizing notes, school bags, coming home, lockers, anything from that level. Very, very important. And I suppose creating a system with the student for doing that. And movement. So obviously loads of students now anymore have movement breaks. There's no movement breaks when I was in school, unfortunately, and we barely even had PE. So movement breaks are really, really vital if they're used accurately, correctly, and they're used regularly. So movement breaks still should apply in a homework or in a study setting. That doesn't mean, you know, running out and going for a marathon. That's going up and down the stairs, but that's a focused movement break. That's not, you know, if a teenager, they're like moving, oh, let me go get my phone to check social media. That's not what constitutes a movement break. It's active level of movement for, you know, even 2 or 3 minutes, even 30 seconds is better than nothing, but regular intervals. So ideally our concentration span from recent research and studies shows we have about a 15-minute window. So often people thought it was 35 minutes, 40 minutes, which is why they originally created 40-minute class timetables in secondary school. It's not really, unfortunately. If you measure brain waves and brain activity, it's about 15 minutes. So generally, if students are studying or doing pieces of homework or they're very young, it may even be less than that. So they should be sitting for long periods of time, understanding and trying to retain long pieces of information without actual element of engagement and movement. Okay, teacher strategies. Okay, and we'll fly through. We've not major left to get through, so hopefully we'll be able to wrap up to give you all a little bit of your Tuesday evening back. So for any teachers watching, we'll run through this again. We do a set teacher training program, so you know, if there's anybody wanting to learn a little bit more, we can look at that. One instruction at a time. We do bits on font and the general layout of font. Limiting white backgrounds, speaking slowly, not loudly. There's a little bit of a misconception before that often teachers thought they could shout, and that might let them understand the information a little bit differently. Color overlays. Hopefully some of you are using color overlays either in school or at home. Visual cues, movement, headings and subheadings. So for notes, headings and subheadings is usually very vital, but not overdoing it. So often we had teachers that would give us notes before to review to see where they, let's say, more friendly for students with different ways of learning, and they'd have headings and subheadings, and this would be highlighted and that'd be outlined in red. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, a car crash basically of stuff on a page. It's to be as easy as much as possible to understand. And the most important one really is limiting the use of red pens. Okay, so red pens for all of us brings it back to things are wrong, things we need to figure out, things we need to change. So we really want to limit red pens, circling, putting stuff around, Xing things through. We don't want to do any of those things as much as possible. We just want to obviously outline, look, these are the areas that we need to work on, put them on a separate page, and then how do we move through that? So how do we work on those in a different way without highlighting directly to the student that they're wrong? Building relationships. Again, as much content I'm trying to get through here to all help with building relationships. But as much of this is really, really vital. So when we get a lot of parents that will ask us about, oh, we're trying this and now they're getting to teenagers and they're really seeing a strain in the relationship. From a young age group, it can work relatively okay if people are on the same page. As students get older, particularly into teenage years, it can be very damaging for a parent and a child relationship to continually, doing homework, doing studying, and that micromanaging element. So ideally putting the onus and responsibility on the school and linking with the school to see what help can be given to help preserve your own relationship with your own child, or seeking additional help where possible and where functional as well. We won't look at all of this in detail, but I suppose the expectation piece is the most important aspect that we look at. So students with different ways of learning are still highly intelligent, often the most intelligent, if I do say so myself, have huge element of creativity and huge amount of strengths and willpower and determination. In an education setting, unfortunately, that's not always illustrated. So we only test upon one element of learning and understanding. Can you learn this piece of information off, and can you produce it a week or a month or 3 months later on a piece of paper in a test? And that's a very old and traditional way, unfortunately, of measuring intelligence. So it's very, very important to set high enough expectations within reason, so limiting the pressure, but still having the expectation that they can still achieve far beyond their abilities that they may be currently presenting. Okay, a little bit about the overlap of the health. Obviously, there's a huge overlap between mental health and learning difficulties, which I'm very passionate about, coming from that space myself. So we won't look into all of the eating patterns and all of that overlap. I have a background massively in nutrition, so we work with a lot of students on their overall eating and well-being, hugely vital just with retaining and understanding information. So cereals, sugars, fats, crisps, fizzy drinks, all of these patterns, smoking and drinking, obviously, as they get older, how they all affect our retention and understanding and performance is extremely detriment to their longer term health. So as much as possible, balanced diet, but we won't even get into that fully in detail today. The 5 T's for mental health in schools. So talking, training, teaching, and tools are most important ones, really, that we feel are really vital to instill. And then obviously the taking care as well is very, very important of each other and of ourselves. Just conscious of time, so I just want to run through some of these. We often kind of do some of these printouts and useful kind of whistle-stop tour things on the one page, which we find a bit enjoyable for people to look at. Loads of teachers have these in classrooms and everything else. So things, we all have difficult days, we all have difficult times, as parents, as teachers, as kids ourselves. What can help cheer us up? So we do a lot with students on when they come to us a given day, sometimes at the end of the week, they're a tough time, tests are coming, or, they're finding things difficult. What helps make it a little bit better? What is manageable and what helps you, them as well as themselves, as well as the parents, what helps you just move through things. And then once we all feel a little better, we know we've higher chances then of finding a bit of a resolution and finding a little bit of a solution to the problem. So just to give you an outline, so our course looks at an awful lot of stuff that we looked at today. We have a series of 5 modules on how to help dyslexics. So we look at very much practical strategies from a classroom base to a home base. So it's homework, it's well-being, it's mainly focused as well on spelling, handwriting, maths for all age groups. So these are very interactive videos, tutorials. We also have a range of doctors, education psychologists, and occupational therapists that also have come on this course to give their own insights and give their own suggestions. And that can be found on our website at the moment. And to move through some of our useful sites, these are also on our website, so I don't need to send these on, but if anybody wants them, no problem. Generaltyping.com. The main one here is the Big Life Journal. Hopefully some of you have already heard of this. They do a huge range of free resources for teachers and for parents, things that can be printed out, things that are very interactive, they're really colourful, they're just really nice to look at. Generally, they're not specifically for students with dyslexia, they're just generally focused on overall well-being and learning. Okay, Then just as a follow-up, so I know Amy has a fabulous, wonderful network going up in Dublin, which is great. So if anybody wants any further information or working with us, that's no problem. Please feel free to get on to us. And our last piece is if anybody did want more individualized help, so we do assessments and a personalized student plan is our main things that we work with. And we do ongoing classes with students, but our main things is that we set up a specific plan to work then with the student. We outline their different ways of learning and how we can work towards that goal. In with that, then we'll also give you access to the online program. So if anybody's interested in further working with us, or if we can help in any way, or help with liaising with the school, please feel free to get on to me after the workshop, and hopefully we can help. Our main thing, mad for the quotes, so try to be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. Generally, look, we all have stuff going on any given day, both inside of school, outside of school, in any different context, right? We all kind of put on the mask, whether we have a learning difference or not. We're all still experts at being able to do that. And I think it's really important that we all have some element of compassion and consideration for the range of things and the range of problems that people have in this current, economic setting and climate. I'll send on a link afterwards, guys, and I'll also just put it in the chat here, just from a little bit of a feedback perspective. If anybody found anything a little bit challenging or want to learn a bit more about a particular area, please feel free to fill that out there as well for me, and I'll just throw that in there. And thank you very much. I know I have loads of questions, so I'll just try and throw this in here first and I'll go through them.